Hi, my name is Katie, and today I'm going to talk about flea markets. More specifically, why an art vendor may or may not want to try it out. Personally, I've been doing conventions. I've been selling at conventions for about 3 years now. I've been doing about 5 a year for about 3 years. And I've recently started doing flea markets too. I've been doing flea markets for about a year now, and I've been doing them almost every week for about the past year, and I feel like I've gotten a lot of benefit from flea markets. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Now, the nice thing about flea markets is that it's a low risk place where you can get more experience. What I mean by low risk is that you don't invest so much money in a flea market as you do into a convention. When you go to a flea market, you can just do a Google search. There's probably plenty flea markets near you, so there's not a whole lot of travel costs or hotel costs. And let's see, it normally doesn't cost very much to get into a flea market. I've personally never gone to a flea market that costs more than $30 per event. So that's significantly lower than a convention cost when you think of like 70 for a fan run convention or 250 for a larger convention like some other things that you've probably heard of. So let's see. Another good thing about flea markets is that they run weekly so that you can really blast through a lot of experience at once. Like if you do conventions occasionally, like only like 5 a year or so, which is what I've been able to do, it's kind of hard to get into multiple conventions. Whereas with a lot of flea markets, all you have to do is show up and say, hey, I want to sell stuff here. Oh, you have money? Oh, okay. Set up. Done. So that was a pro. Now here's a con. If you are very successful at lining up conventions and you already have a lot of experience doing conventions, then keep doing what works for you. If you manage to line up conventions like almost every week of the year or every other week, or you just are able to just barely keep up with replenishing inventory, like you spend a lot of time cranking it out and you can sell it as fast as you can make it, then keep doing what you're doing. Do what works for you. I would not recommend giving up doing conventions for flea markets. I recommend flea markets more as a way for less experienced people or people who might not be able to put in as many conventions to be able to have something to support themselves in between, something to kind of develop more experience. I probably repeated myself sometime in that phrase, but oh well. Another thing that I really like about flea markets is that I'm frequently recognized by people who have seen my booth at conventions. Or like, hey, have you been to Kineticon? Hey, did I see your booth at Anime Boston? Or stuff like that. I also have people coming up to my booths at conventions who recognize me from flea markets. I attribute a lot of this to the fact that a lot of cosplayers will build their cosplays at thrift stores or flea markets or stuff like that. So they'll show up in the convention mindset thinking, hey, I'm going to put together this character now. Oh, look, pretty things. So obviously cosplayers are not the only people who attend flea markets. There's also a wide group of other people too. There's also parents coming in with their kids. There's all sorts of things. I know that I just mentioned like two groups, but there's a lot more too. So you reach a much wider audience than you would have if you were just doing conventions, and a lot of them probably like your stuff too. Maybe it's a demographic who's attracted to your stuff, who maybe you didn't think would be attracted to it. It's really nice to kind of experiment with that kind of stuff. Now, on the other hand, here's a con to why you may not want to show up. A lot of people show up to flea markets with the mindset of degrading your self esteem and your product at so much so that they can offer you an absolute ridiculously lowball offer and then make you work for every nickel and dime above there. There's areas in between. There's like the extreme excessive bargainer, and there's people who are just happy to see nice things, who also like to spend money on said nice things. Now, a flea market will help you to recognize people who are unfairly demeaning your work. Like, I had a guy show up, he held up one of my duct tape bifold handmade wallets with 6 card slots. He said, I might pay $1 for this. And I just blew him off, and it was fantastic. It felt so good to just say, no, that is not fair. You need to leave right now. Now, you also get people who try to haggle with you. You can learn how to handle them. You can learn if you want to haggle with certain things, and you can learn how to personally value internally what you think your stuff is worth. So I suppose that's both a pro and a con, because you deal with people who kind of try to haggle you at conventions, not nearly as much at flea markets, but at flea markets you'll get a lot of experience dealing with that, and you can figure out how you want to handle it for conventions. Now, if you find yourself sitting at a con, at your booth at a con, and when someone comes up and they say something a little bit off or maybe a little bit rude or something to that effect, and it just eats at you through the convention, you might want to try a flea market, because sometimes when people say something, they don't intend it to be rude, like they don't really think how it's getting received by the art vendor. And then you can either learn how to roll with it, or you can learn how to gently guide them into maybe a nicer way of phrasing what they just said. Maybe that'll make you feel better. So basically, it's a repeating experience that you can use to work with how you want to phrase things, with how you want to deal with certain issues. Now, again, if that really gets at you and you don't really think that you can work with it, if that's just something that you prefer to push to the back of your head when you're at a convention, then maybe you don't want to do a flea market. That's just something that I found beneficial for me, but you can take it or leave it as you like. Okay, I think that's about it as far as advice to current convention artists goes from me and my experience. I also recommend starting with flea markets before actually selling at a convention if you haven't sold at a convention before, because it lets you kind of try things out, it lets you kind of see what you want to do for your layout before you actually get to the event. But yeah, so if you could, let me know in comments if you are currently a convention artist and you're looking into other things outside of conventions, or maybe you weren't considering it before and maybe you're trying it now. Or maybe this video is telling you, hey, I don't want to do flea markets. That's okay too. Let me know, because I'm really interested in what you guys think. Alright, so that was it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.